Democracy, the ideology we have all known to be greatly effective in constantly upholding the desired stability and order of the government, state, and nation. Almost majority of the countries worldwide employs democracy as their government system, though each would have different models as to meet its compatibility with the people. This marks the success of democracy's global prevalence. However, it is not always perfect because of human stains, which means mistakes. As we observe, democracy is being mocked by ambitious yet greedy actions of the people. Philippines sets the perfect example, not only because we all live here, but because there have been several news dictating events representing poverty, political marginalization, and racial inequality. How does poverty affect Philippine democracy? Poverty, as we all know, is the word that defines the realistic societal negativities occurring in a country. It signifies that the country is still far from absolute development, as government officials have not yet implemented any solution to this kind of problem. This is one of the common controversies the Philippines, as a third world nation, is currently facing. For starters, the presence of poverty can already be traced back from the early times of human civilization, from the ancient biblical stories of Israelite slavery, to the ancient caste system of India, to the medieval feudalism, to the revolutionary eras, and to the great wars that has passed. Perhaps poverty has truly become existent, but no one has ever made a solution to totally abolish it. According to the website named Poverty in SD, there are three aspects of poverty, namely the poverty of money, the poverty of access, and the poverty of power. Poverty of money pertains to the insufficiency of monetary funds to buy basic necessities. Poverty of access is about the people's lack of access to any property needs, or one they can rightfully have. Poverty of power, on the other hand, defines the immaturity and irresponsibility of the government and those in power or the wealthy to uniformly and legally distribute the aid to the needy. Poverty imparts unwanted effects to the people. It stains the government ideals of sustaining good governance and stabilized community. It defines that the country's economy is precisely low compared to other national economies. It projects possible discrimination that feuds the wealthy against the poor. It indicates the insufficiency and inefficiency of technology in an area or possibly the country itself. Lastly, poverty increases the possibility of susceptibility and vulnerability of one area to hazards and disasters. Perhaps all of these effects could be seen or observed in the Philippine area or the Philippine democracy. Philippines is a democratic republic country that roots back during the colonial revolutionary times. It started from the Republic of Biak na Bato to the current Fifth Republic under the 1987 Constitution, led by President Rodrigo Duterte. The presence of democracy in the previous Philippine Republic have proven that it has become stable and sustainable to all people. However, today it seems that President Duterte is trying to reorganize the country's government into a federalist type. Just recently, news has published that the occurrence of Constitutional Convention or Constitutional Assembly is being held to discuss this matter. Currently, it is still under process. Plus, there have been critiques towards Duterte about his campaign decision because it could possibly cause more poverty or other problems because of stratification of states. As a third world country, poverty is covered nationwide. Philippine Statistics Association has presented some statistics of poverty depreciation for 11 years, which is not that great either, or the gap of percentage is not that far. It was indicated that the farming sectors has the highest poverty rates compared to the urban sectors. Asian Development Bank also states that Philippines ranks the third place in the Asian poverty rates with percentage of 21.6%. A Rappler News presents a 2013-2014 information that poverty exists because of corruption and that the country ranks 85th in it among the 175 nations in the world. The possible conversion of these two factors, poverty and corruption, can also be deduced and understood in such a way that the poor is also committed or possibly committed in corruptive activities for avaricious uses. The previous presidents have made effort to eradicate poverty, but with them still selfishly upholding the corruption, poverty can never be obliterated. If you recall, during the regime of President Marcos or President Era, the current administration might need to still learn from these mistakes of the past, as more poverty can prevail through the drug addictive abuses and extrajudicial killings. Reorganizing the country from democratic to federalism seems very undemocratic, or might not be that democratic, because it's like ordering a new food while not finishing the first meal. Therefore, from all of my claims and with supported factual data, we could say that poverty is indeed a realistic threat to democracy, which needs to be taken action as soon as possible, or else the future that we all desire won't be met. How does racial inequality affect Philippine democracy?
Racial inequality is common on all races, especially to people who are different among the others. Racial inequality is leading the people to become divided between them and people who are different. Most of this racial inequality is derived from the amount of melanin in our skin, has to show based on the cultural ethnicity that we have. The Philippines has a large number of cultural ethnic groups, and these groups are the ones who are mostly experiencing racial inequality. Our country, being a democratic government who gives importance to its people, still continues to be exposed in racial inequality. Our society that we live in is responsible in building a barrier between the people who came from cultural ethnic groups and people who came from cities. These boundaries are set for people who are different to most people. People who are experiencing these boundaries are having a difficult time in coping up with the democracy that our country is said to have. But where is the democracy in jobs who are filtering the employees who are applying for a job? Some employers prioritize employees who are rich and grew up in the NCR rather than employees who are skilled and experienced but grew up from provinces and has ethnic groups. Another context of racial democracy is happening in school. Whenever there is a new kid who came from a different place, some kids would make fun of people of his skin or the way he talks. This kind of people limits the democracy someone must have based on the opportunities and benefits one must attain as a Filipino. Thus, does that make the democracy of a country being so good or appropriate to someone or to anyone who have the right to possess it?
How does political marginalization affect Philippine democracy?
Democracy is more likely to develop and endure when all segments of a society are free to participate and influence political outcomes without suffering bias or reprisal. But many new and emerging democracies, large portions of the populations are excluded from politics based on their ethnicity, religion, age, disability, gender, or sexual orientation. Political marginalization disables the opportunity of a group and some individuals in the society who has contrasting beliefs to the beliefs of the majority in the society, such as sexual orientation, religion, and people with disabilities. Usually these people are the powerless youth, people with disabilities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, or the LGBT communities, and ethnic groups who are facing bias and discrimination, which leads to social and political marginalization. So the poor has insufficient rights in participating in a political agenda, for they are known to be insignificant portion in the society. The poor has limited knowledge about politics because they are known to be unschooled, untaught, and uneducated. And for whatever these people are fighting, such as their rights and well-being, the society will consider their validations useless. The LGBT community also has less opportunity in political activities. The society contradicts the sexual preference of the LGBT community, which leads to the discrimination of the society against their community. And for the society, the majority in the society does not approve of the same-sex marriage that the LGBT community is fighting for. And the society does not agree with their ideology. Their voices of their political regards continues to remain fruitless. And ethnic groups are the minority in the society, for they are the only group of people who continues to nurture their ancient culture. However, in today's society, majority of the people follows mixed culture from different countries, which makes the majority people being lost tradition. And for that reason, these ethnic groups remains voiceless in raising their rights against discrimination and for political inclusion.
From all these, perhaps we could claim that democracy and its models has indeed been stained, mocked, and continuously been used to separate people instead of uniting them. From all those efforts to attain the glorious rise of democracy's world domination, hides its dark side, which is easily manipulated by those who are in power and ambitiously greedy for one. Everything and everyone is affected, for everyone lives in this world of democracy. The presence of poverty, racial inequality, and political marginalization are the definitive proofs for which democracy cannot be utilized in sustaining a good future without totally abolishing these three factors and more of its similarities. Constant political corruption and social discrimination, which are human doings, shall only expand and extend the realistic effects of these three aspects of poor democracy. Rather, only in such action, true and desired democratic change can be attained. Everyone wants change, for which everyone must work their own way in grasping that change, democratic change. No one is specially exempted, being considered as the highest or the boss, because this is not an equitable equality of true democracy. Perhaps this is one lesson everyone must learn, especially we are all living in a world where advancements are at its peak, in which democracy or true democracy must also be able to reach its pinnacle. And that apex must be fully sustained for future generations who depends on current democratic developments for their livelihood convenience.